But that was my father. He was he was a funny guy, but I didn't like fucking smart ass people who was trying to fuck with him or trying to make themselves anyway. Whatever. He was a great guy, but he had these hands. He had these fucking hands that were mine are small compared to his. His hands were massive. His hands were, and he wasn't a big guy. He was a small guy like me, but his hands were big and heavy and rough. They look like fucking. They look like baseball catcher's mitts. Like they look like fucking leather catcher's mitts. They were tough and leathery and big and hard. And they like those are fucking hands, man. You get into a bar fight with those things, you're gonna fucking knock someone's head off. Several times he threatened when I was a kid to give me a couple of slaps. He never actually slapped me. He never actually slapped me with. If my father had actually slapped me when I was a kid, I'd be getting out of the fucking coma. What time is it? About now, actually. I'd be getting out of the coma now. Can you imagine getting a fucking mitt like that across your head? But, and then you get the visits. If you're Italian, you know what I mean. The Italian visits where you go visit your friends at their house, visit their family. You go there for some dinner. You go there, you're hanging around the dinner table for oh my God, I hated the fucking visits. Not because I loved to visit friends and family, but it would take hours. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours sitting in these people's fucking house. And then when you had to leave, and I know that you Italian guys know where I'm going with this. When you had to leave, it was the goodbye. The goodbye lasted forever. When you had the coffee and you finished everything else and now you're leaving and you're on the porch. And you're on the porch saying the 8-hour goodbye. The goodbye sometimes would take longer than the fucking visit themselves. And you're sitting there, and I'm sitting there waiting on this porch, and oh yeah, thank you. How many times you gotta say thank you and have a good night and whatever? Like hours. My father's favorite thing was when he went outside, my mother would stay on the porch with the hosts, the family talking. My father would get on the porch, walk down the steps, onto the sidewalk, and let out the biggest fucking fart you've ever heard. And I'm right beside him going, like, they can fucking hear you on the porch, by the way. My father, hey, as long as you're out of the house and you're off of your friend's property and you're on the sidewalk, all bets are off. You can fart, you can burp, because they technically, but they can hear you still. I don't care. I'm not in their house anymore. Oh man, it was nuts, man. Unbelievable. Like seriously, you're gonna go to someone's house, and then you're gonna fart on their fucking house. Anyway, but he also had this weird thing about him. Where he wasn't very adventurous. What I mean is, Italians made their own homemade stuff, right? They made their own homemade wine, their own homemade sausages, their own homemade tomato sauce. They made all that shit at home, right? But not much extra. And then when for example, I told my father years ago when I was a teenager, it's like, why don't we try making some homemade beer sometime? We make wine all the time. I want try making some homemade beer, see how it comes out. He fucking freaked. He fucking shit. No, you can't make homemade beer. Your compadre 20 fucking years ago tried to make homemade beer and they came out shit. So therefore, nobody makes homemade beer. Only the beer companies make. He wasn't very adventurous. If somebody told them one thing that had happened, from that they experienced it, they tried something and it failed, that's it. He would take their word for it. He would never try it himself. I'd say, but, the first person who made wine and homemade sausage and homemade meats and preserves and that kind of shit and tomato sauce, I'm sure they fucked up when they said, no, you can't. This one motherfucker 20 years ago tried to make homemade beer and it didn't work out. Therefore, Italians will not make homemade. He was very close-minded in that thing. But I'll tell you one thing that I think is funny and also kind of sad. one time I got my father in shit, and I caused some little domestic there between him and my mother. When I was in my teens, there was, my father had this tool shed, right? A room with all of his tools in there and his, mechanics and auto parts and that kind of shit. So I used that room, the top shelf, to store shit, to hide stuff that nobody would ever find. I hid a box of condoms once. I was using condoms. It was an open box of condoms, half of them were gone, and I stored it on the top shelf in my father's tool shed. One day, my mother decides to go into that tool shed looking for something and finds this fucking box of condoms. Now, obviously, it wasn't my father's, and he wasn't using it as far as she knew. So she's like scratching and go like, what's this motherfucker hiding condoms in his fucking tool shed? And this went on for like a month, I was like, yeah, your father have some fucking secrets down there. I don't know what your father do. That's how I imitate my mother. I never told him that it was me. So she kept going on and on thinking like, my husband has a box of condoms that I'm not part of. I don't know what he's doing with it. And, and I guess she kept checking because they kept going missing. I don't know. Did she fucking count them? And it's like, Ma, who's he using these condoms on? That motherfucker, son of a bitch. Yeah. Yours truly likes to cause domestics. But anyway, just wanted to say hi. I wanted to give you guys a quick little episode over here. And I love you guys.